just too recently. So why not? If they're not in a war, well, do they need anything better? I don't think so.
Probably not. I mean, and if you look at South America, they actually do some very, very interesting stuff. They take aircraft that we consider like civil aircraft, like stuff that you'd see at the airport down the street, not super sophisticated. And they mount machine guns and rockets on them and turn them into an air force. I mean, it's pretty amazing, some of the stuff that they do with, these very rudimentary aircraft. So I've always been quite impressed by it.
Oh, why not? It does what they need to do. Now, secret underground bases, do they exist in our country and all over the world? I'm talking about where maybe even aliens are working with our government.
Well, the underground bases for sure. I mean, NORAD, which is our central kind of control authority, right? It's built inside of a mountain in Cheyenne Mountain. The Russians have one. What's it called? Kosmotev, which is like NORAD. They had a second one that, not really sure what they're doing with it, but they had built it out called Yamato. I mean, you've got the seed vault in Svalbard. There are 12 other seed, actually 11 now, I think. One was destroyed in the Philippines, but you've got like 11 or 12 seed vaults that are bunkers that are buried all over the world. You've got Raven Rock Site R, which is a FEMA facility. There's a bunch of continuity of government facilities scattered all over the U.S. There's 4 primary bunkers in a circle around Moscow. I mean, there's tons and tons of bunkers. I mean, there are bunkers everywhere. Yeah. Now, do they have aliens in them? I don't know, but they're definitely bunkers. We have lots and lots of bunkers.
Oh, yeah. And you mentioned like the seed vaults. I was just recently reading the one in Antarctica is being flooded because of, the melting ice and snow.
Yeah, I mean, Antarctica, McMurdo is in Antarctica. That's our big base in Antarctica, and it's a crazy place. Werner Herzog, who's a very famous filmmaker, he actually went down there for like a year and filmed the people who live there, and it's actually a really interesting documentary. Everybody's a little loony.
Well, I think being out there, you would be, yeah. If you weren't, you would go there within a couple of months that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you spend half the year not being able to go outside. Because, I mean, whatever wind chill, you get, listener, what they get is about 100,000 bazillion times the word.
Oh, yeah. Now, also... But, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I
was going to say the alien question, that's more open, right? Nobody knows for sure. There might be.
I don't know. I just go back in my mind, in Antarctica, the Nazis, in the late 30s, during the World War II. Mary Joyce, back a few years ago, Google Maps brought up, and photos brought up a opening in Antarctica. It was big, that you could fly a 747 in. And then all of a sudden, when she went to get, more information on it on Google, pictures of it, it wouldn't show up anymore. It was taken down. But I'm just wondering, if we got like a secret base like in Antarctica, is it left over from the Germans during World War II? Is there Germans still maybe, with Americans or with aliens in Antarctica? I mean, a lot of strange things still keep happening in Antarctica. A year ago, all the scientists and all these special people went to Antarctica, and what did they go there for?
I think we do stuff in Antarctica. There's a persistent rumor that a place called Base 211 existed in Antarctica. And that's where a whole bunch of U-boats made a run for at the end of the war. I interviewed a guy named Dr. Richard Allen Miller. He claims to have been there, gone there. And there's plenty of evidence that the Germans were extremely interested in Queen Maud Land and New Schwabenland in Antarctica, and it's an area of Antarctica we don't go. But I'm sure that because of its relative position on the Earth, I'm sure that they run tests down there and do all kinds of wacky stuff. Because it's also so isolated that it's like if you want to do something, nobody's going to see it.
Oh yeah, you probably don't have to worry even about the satellites.
Oh yeah, you do.
No.
No.
Yeah. Well,
You always have to worry. Everywhere on the Earth, you have to worry about satellites.
Well, it is funny. This past summer, on my own property, I was looking on Google, and all of a sudden I see my wife, in her bathing suit, out by, we have horses and all that stuff on our mini farm. And she was suntanning, and I'm going, oh, my God, I can actually recognize her. I could, read the license plate off of one of the vehicles. I'm going, this is interesting.
Well, when I was a kid, I remember I went to the library, and I got a book on spy satellites. And this is in probably the mid-'80s. And I got this book on spy satellites, and they they had a simulation in the book of the resolution in the mid-'80s of a keyhole satellite, which was at that time our primary surveillance satellite. And it started with like North America, and then it zoomed down to like the western states, it zoomed down to the U.S., western states, the Bay Area, kept zooming down, and then eventually there was a photo of a guy laying on a hammock with a book open on his chest, and he was reading War and Peace, and you could actually make out the words. So, I remember when I first put up a website, I went to a place called a Terra server, and you could buy 3-meter resolution images, and so each pixel was about 3 meters, and that was commercial. So if I could buy a 3-meter, photo that was very, very high resolution, then what a surveillance satellite is way beyond that.
That is so scary. That it is. I mean, and the thing is, occasionally you go on Google and, like I said, I saw some pictures of my wife, and I'm going, oh, wow. Now, I don't think anybody's going to be looking for pictures of my wife on, but for me to find it when I was just trying to see if I could basically just spot my house, I would have been happy. But then I found my house, right. And then I zoomed in more and more, and then I'm going, ooh, this is not good.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to a guy named T.D. Barnes, and he's the president of Roadrunners International, which is an association of the people who worked on the A-12 and SR-71 programs at Area 51. And he was explaining that, you have these hourly satellite passes, and so what they would do is if they had to do things outside the hangar, they would work on whatever for about 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Then they would spend about 10 or 15 minutes like packing everything up and getting it back into the hangar. And he said a few times that they didn't quite make it, so they had a procedure where they would put a certain kind of tarp over whatever they were working on. They'd get the big stuff inside the hangar as fast as they could, and then they would all lay down on the runway and cover themselves with the tarp. And they had to do this like every hour because the satellites were passing.
Oh, wow. That would be horrible to miscalculate that, that?
Yeah. Well, apparently they had an alarm or something would go off.
That's why
it's a problem.
That's why we know when North Korea says, oh, we're not building any more bases for launching missiles. And we go, oh, yeah, you are. Hey, we see how many people you got right there doing it.
Well, we can watch them in real time.
Yeah, I mean,
nowadays, they can just park the satellite over it. They can watch it in real time as they're building the building.
Yeah, who cares about TV anymore? Just go on and watch what's going down down in another country, what they're doing. I mean, that is scary because we lost our privacy.
No, I mean, the credo that I've always lived by is that assume you're being watched. I don't ever think that I'm not being watched. And some people put duct tape over the cameras on their laptops or their cell phones or whatever. But it's like, your cell phone can still be remotely switched on without you knowing, to turn it into a bug. So I always assume that somebody's listening to me or watching me, either in the sky or, through my TV or my phone or whatever. I think it just keeps you safer that way.
Well, a lot better. And that's what's scary because, like Ronald Farnham was with the DOD. Some of the stuff he's told me in the past. I mean, you go in your living room, right? And you're talking to your wife, some private stuff, right? And depending on, if you're interested at all, with any agency, and it doesn't take much. Just knowing somebody who's being on a watch list will get you on a watch list. But I mean, you sit there in your living room and you're having a private conversation, and maybe somebody's eavesdropping on every single word you say. And that's what's scary. And, Samsung got busted here about a year ago on one of their phones. They built a listening device, not in the phone so much. It was on the battery itself.
Well, there was also the story about Supermicro that I guess it's kind of played down now, but supposedly engineers at Apple and at what was the other place? It was Apple, and I want to say Google. They had purchased Supermicros, and they were actually inspecting the board. Excuse me. And they found a series of chips that were actually camouflaged as like capacitors, and these chips, they believe, were tracing devices that could actually monitor data going across the board and network traffic.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried because he was talking about the other night that, the new G5, whatever it is, 5G or whatever. He said that is going to get really, really bad for everybody, and people don't realize that.
Sure. I mean, as you move toward higher bands on the phones, eventually you'll get into like the microwave band. We can start microwaving ourselves.
Yeah. Put a TV dinner in your coat pocket and cook it on the way.
But that's one of the things that, what's the name of the whistleblower who's in Russia? Oh, I forget his name now. But he released a slide deck that actually talked about, a program that they had for, for monitoring people through their telephones and their TVs, and then there's a story from way back that was in Wired about a network engineer in San Francisco, and he was doing some work on one of the core switches, and he saw that all the internet traffic was being mirrored onto another port. And so he went and found the port, and then he traced the cable, and he kept tracing. He comes to a locked door, he unlocks the door, keeps tracing the cable. And then he comes to another locked door. He can't unlock it, so he gets the manager. So the manager comes down. He unlocks it. Now they're both tracing the cable. He comes to another door. They have to get the director. The director unlocks the door, and they're tracing the cable. And eventually it ended up going into a black box that said property U.S. government. And so the director calls the VP and says, "Hey, what is this thing?" And the VP's like, "Don't go there. Just leave."
Yeah.
So that was an early carnivore system where they were inhaling all the internet traffic that was passing through this access point on the AT&T network, and they were analyzing the traffic for content. So, like I said, these things are way beyond your control. I assume that all my stuff is being monitored.
Oh,
it's just simpler.
Well, it is, because according to what Ronald said, they got a huge big building. That's all they do is they monitor everybody's, emails, a certain, your conversations. If you say a keyword, all of a sudden it gets picked up. Then you start getting monitored. Or if somebody, is on a list of, being watched, and you even talk to them on the phone, all of a sudden now you're on that list. Now it even goes better than that. Now you talk to other people, they get added on the list. So all of a sudden, here's all these people, on a list that being watched and listened to. So that is what's scary. And people don't realize it's bad.
And I understand the logic of it. you know, that the end result, a wise man